Hello chess friends and welcome to Yazard of Chess channel and welcome to a new chess strategy and tactics video. So in this video we'll talk about the pawn majority attack. Recently on my YouTube chess channel in our chess strategy and tactics series we have talked about the pawn minority attack, so you can also check it out. Here's the video of the link. In the pawn minority attack we used our pawn minority against our opponent's pawn majority. Now it's a little bit different. We're using the pawn majority in order to attack our opponent's pawn minority. And here I already prepared a very complex position for you. What the problem about this position is, it's that first of all the pawn structure is asymmetrical. What I mean about the asymmetrical pawn structure is that we have here a 2 versus 1 situation on the queen side. For instance, a symmetrical pawn structure would be a 2 versus 2 situation, or maybe here a 3 versus 3 situation on the king side. Look at this. Now we have 2 versus 1 on the queen side. So here white is having here a 4 versus 3 pawn majority against these 3 pawns of black. So we have here now really an asymmetrical pawn structure. So black is now an advantage on the queen side, white is here now an advantage on the king side. So we can really call this pawn structure as really a dynamic pawn structure. And the outcome about this pawn structure, what you can get out of this attack is of course a devastating position first of all here on the king side. So if white continues now with this pawn majority attack here against these 2 minor pieces, black is probably getting destroyed here. But the problem I think for white is here that white needs to make something out of this attack, because we should really separate the pawn majority in the middle game stage but also the pawn majority in the end game stage. It's not the same, because look at this. As much as we're staying in the middle game stage, this is a perfect position for white. But maybe we're not playing the good game here. We're maybe messing up a little bit our tactics and we're finally reaching this position. So we're heading towards more and more towards the end game stage. It's not, I think, the middle game anymore. The position is simplified, the queens are off the board. In my opinion, this is not a dynamic attack anymore. So you see, we're getting more and more towards the end game stage. Probably still white is slightly better here. I'm not saying that black is winning the game, but maybe we're messing further our position up and we're not playing correct moves. Then we suddenly get this kind of a position. So maybe we get out of this, trade off more pieces, and suddenly we are reaching the end game stage. So you see, as much as we stayed in the middle game stage, the pawn majority here of white on the king side was a perfect pawn majority. But now look at this. Now actually, when we talk about the end game pawn majority, here black should be better, because black can always create here a distant pass pawn. So the outcome of the pawn majority attack can be a distant pass pawn. So you see, we can create a distant pass pawn that would deflect white king towards the queen side. So white needs now really to step back, has to move now the king towards the queen side, is simply deflected by the potential progress of these 2 pawns by black, and black will pick up simply this pawn, will eventually pick up both of these pawns, and will start to push one of these pawns and will eventually win this endgame. So from an endgame's perspective, the pawn majority, in order to create a distant pass pawn, is winning here for black in this particular position. So that's why it's really hard to play this game. So you see, when we are here on the attacking side, I'm not saying white made something wrong here. White has here really brilliant position, has the beautiful bishop pair, is creating further attack against both of these knights. F5 is coming, the position is devastating, dark square problems here, the queen is probably coming into the game, maybe we can even deliver checkmate on g7. So as much as we can create dynamics on the king side, we should be better. But if the game reaches the end game stage, then black is winning the game because of the possibility of a distant pass pawn. What, for instance, black could also mess up, what black should also not forget, is that maybe a potential outcome of this particular attack by white can be the supported pass pawn. So black should not forget about this. So maybe white is launching an attack, maybe messed up the position as we saw, maybe created this kind of stuff, probably was not satisfied with his tactical possibilities in the game, and then eventually reached the possibility to create the supported pass pawn. Look at this. This is now the supported pass pawn. It's a passer that's supported by this other pawn, and this now suddenly is a winning endgame here for white, which is really incredible. So you think you should really think about these things when you are playing the pawn majority attack. What kind of an outcome will happen? What kind of a pawn structure will I get is this good for me? Should I go into an endgame? Should I not go into an endgame? Should I just defend the position? How should I make progress? These are the questions that you should ask yourselves, because you can mess it up. For instance, in this particular position, white is winning because white is simply going towards the spawns. And okay, black can always maybe try to at least grab the spawns, but look at this. When you go behind the spawn in order to support, in order to take out the pawn on f4 that is supporting the pawn on e5, white is simply pushing the pawn, and you can never catch up anymore with the pawn. Will make a new queen, and this is game over. So these are the potential outcomes out of pawn majority. So the distant pass pawn, the supported pass pawn, and of course a devastating attack here by white, which is in my opinion in this particular position the most possible outcome. I think in this particular position white should be much better. White should really destroy. But if the attack splashed, as I said, if the attack splashed, if you don't make anything out of this, then you could reach this kind of a position and you messed it up because black is winning the potential endgame. So as I said, maybe you can also create a supported pass pawn. So we should really separate, and that's now the most important thing. So middle game pawn majority against endgame pawn majority, which are really two different things. So let's see now, for instance, this position. This is now an endgame pawn majority, so it's now perfect play, because again we have this position where we can create a distant pass pawn, and black will be always deflected. We move our king towards this pawn, we'll eventually create one of these passers, and will eventually win the game. So this is also now a very important study. So let's see now beautiful examples from middle game stages, but we'll see also how to defend yourself against the pawn majority, against this kind of stuff. When you reach maybe here the position from black's perspective, for instance, if you're getting simply destroyed by your opponent's pawn majority, how to defend this position from black's perspective. There are a couple of defensive strategies that I wanted to show you here in this particular video, how to defend against pawn storms, which will be then at the end of the video. So let's see now our first example. This is, in my opinion, the perfect example, sort of pawn majority endgame versus pawn majority middle game. From a middle game's perspective, in my opinion, this should be perfect game here for white, because white can play g4, f5. We'll try to open the position. Black doesn't have the dark square bishop that could protect maybe here the king, if the king gets attacked maybe on dark squares with bishop to h6. If the queen somehow gets on f6 and similar stuff, you can even get checkmate on g7. So these are the things I think that bother here black in the continuation of the game. You see also the rook is very active. So from a middle game's perspective, this pawn majority, this 4 versus 3 situation that white is here, is perfectly fine. But as long as white is keeping a good game, this should be winning for white. But as much as maybe if white messes up the position now, as we said, maybe black can create here then a distant pass pawn. If you could just imagine now this position without the rooks, without the queens, without the bishop and the knight on the board, then black is winning because of the opportunity to create a distant pass pawn. So we would reach again the endgame stage. So for instance, in this particular position, it was a beautiful game between Evgeny Posny against Petar Spasic. Here it's a perfect example how black is trying to reach the endgame stage and how white is trying to destroy here black's king's position. So these are, as we said in the beginning, two possible outcomes of this particular pawn majority. So knight to b6. So you see, in every move, black is trying to simplify the game by trading off more pieces and reach the endgame stage. Then if that happens, black is winning the game. Rook to d8, we have now f5. So you see, white on the other hand is trying to create dynamics, is trying to open the position, is trying to destroy black's king. So now queen to d5, again an idea, simplify the game, trading off more pieces, reach the endgame stage. Of course, white is not interested in this kind of a scenario, is hoping to get maybe again a new attack with e6 and similar stuff, maybe g4. I'm not saying which move is now the best move, but I think you can understand the potential strategy about both players here. Black, as I said, wants to reach the endgame stage, white is trying to destroy black's king. So knight to d7, and now comes e6, and this is now a breakthrough motif. You should many times use this kind of an idea, maybe even sacrifice the pawn just in order to open the position. Look at this, after f takes e6, actually Evgeny Posny took f takes g6, now rook to f8 happened, we have here now g takes h7, and now after king to h8 we have now queen to h6, and from this point on this should be a much better position for white. So I don't want to show you now the whole game. It's not the point about that. Really, it doesn't matter if now white wins the game, black wins the game. But I think mission accomplished here for white. So white created really an unbalanced position, wild position. The king is naked, the king can be endangered. So still, black didn't reach the endgame stage. That's, I think, the most important thing here to say. Evgeny Postny played this beautiful e6 move, which created really an open position against black's king and has now really, really good game. So this was the way to go. So here, for instance, is a position. It was a beautiful gameplay by Stockfish against Lila C0. Please pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. Try to maybe see how to create dynamics here, how to create a pawn majority attack here from white perspective, because we are still in the middle game stage. So now our pawn majority attack would make sense, because if this game would be an endgame, then you should be careful what you're doing, where you're pushing pawns, where you're attacking. If you actually want to go into the endgame, that's also a question that you have to ask yourself. So now, what would be, for instance, your idea in this particular game? How would you make progress here in order to create maybe some dynamics in the middle game stage? So pause the video, take your time, and let's talk about this position a little bit more. So okay, so see, the problem I think here in white's position is that this centralized knight on e5, and many of us would try to play something like this: knight to e5, d takes e5. But look at this position is becoming now a symmetrical position. That's something that leads many times into a drawish position. So you see, we have now a perfect 3 versus 3 situation. We have now here this kind of stuff, 3 versus 3. Okay, I'm not saying again which position is better. It's not the point about that. But when we have the symmetrical pawn structures, it's very, very, very hard to create dynamics. It's very hard to open a position. Look at this. With move d takes e5. Now again, we have also here pawn equality, 4 versus 4. So it's really a perfect symmetrical position. Probably white still can make progress with ideas of bishop to c4, maybe h4, h5. So as I said, these are just now tactical moves that we're thinking of. But in order to not allow black to create here the symmetrical pawn structures, we should not take out the knight on e5. So that's the point about this particular example. So here in the game, Stockfish played a weird move, knight to h2. But it makes really sense, because now f4 is coming, f4, e5, g5, bishop to e2, h4, h5. Now the pawn storm is coming because we didn't trade off the pieces. So this was a beautiful move. Knight to h2, retreating. It's seemingly a bad move. We should not play, of course, passive, and we should not push the knight on the edge of the board. These are tiny little principles that we should break sometimes in chess, I think. Now it's a perfect example how Stockfish gets out of the attack and will launch now a beautiful 4 versus 3 pawn majority attack here on the king side. Because we're still in the middle game stage, this pawn majority attack makes sense. We haven't reached the end game stage. We haven't this situation of this particular position where black can maybe create a distant pass pawn. It's really unclear what's going to happen in a couple of moves. We cannot really talk that black is preparing here to create a distant pass pawn, because black has to really defend the position. And actually, Lila C0 got destroyed here by Stockfish attack. Bishop to e2, f4 was played here in the continuation, bishop to h5. Look at this, queen to f3. So many moves, many dirty moves are possible here for white, but we can agree that white is simply on the attacking side. White has now a beautiful attacking flow, and that was only possible because of this beautiful knight to h2 move. That was the beginning move, the beginning of our pawn majority attack. So really great example. So here is a beautiful example. Here we have the legend of the sport. Here we have Magnus Carlsen versus Boris Gelfand, and this is one of my favorite examples of the pawn majority attack. So we can agree here that it doesn't make sense for Magnus Carlsen to create here a pawn minority attack. We have talked about the pawn minority attack. As I said, please watch also that video, because we have talked about many important ideas there. What should Magnus do? You cannot just try h4, h5, launching your attack maybe also with the g pawn, because if you do that, you are weakening, of course, your own king. That's, I think, the main issue. And then your pawn minority attack, in order to create maybe some open files, open diagonals, open spaces against opponent's king, doesn't make sense. So what Magnus is relying on here is his pawn majority attack on the queen side. But this is still an middle game stage. Still nothing special is going on. So Magnus wants now finally to push the ball on b4. So the b4 goal is his, I think, main goal. He wants to play b4, and then afterwards he wants to play b5. But look at this. Bishop to b4 is already here. Queen is targeting the b4. The pawn on a5 is also targeting the b4 move. It's almost impossible to play the move b4, but Magnus would not be Magnus if Magnus would not make that happen, because here Magnus showed really his great tactical but also positional skills. He played a beautiful stunning bishop to d4, and of course if you take now queen to b2, then knight to d5 comes with discovered attack against the queen, and the bishop is getting trapped. You cannot even take out the pawn on a3. The queen is protecting that, so you will eventually lose the piece. So that's why after move bishop to d4, here Boris Gelfand tried queen to b3, but now Magnus Carlsen attacked, also again with the same threat. It's an indirect attack against the queen, so again we're trying knight to d5. Now Boris Gelfand played queen to c7, and now beautiful move by Magnus Carlsen b4. He made that move happen with his beautiful piece activity. Look, now he's storming with his pawn majority attack against black. So he has now a 3 versus 2 situation now on the queen side. I'm not saying this is winning or something, but we can agree that this move that Magnus pulled off now finally the move b4, creates further dynamics. It's a beautiful move because, again, after a takes b4, a takes b4, the problem is now you cannot, of course, take with bishop to b4 because bishop to f6 is going to happen. You cannot take because of the beautiful activity here here by the queen. So that's why after move a takes b4, here Boris Gelfand tried knight to h5, attacking the queen, but also protecting the g7 pawn. Now Magnus played queen to f6, threatens now a checkmate on g7, and also is attacking the knight. We have bishop to f6, queen to h5, bishop to d4. So Magnus saw all of this. Really brilliant play by Magnus. Rook to d4. Now after queen to c3, now Magnus pulled off this stunner. Queen to a5, and look at this. If you take, of course, you get checkmated on d8, but I think mission accomplished. We are reaching more and more towards the endgame stage. That's the point about this Magnus Carlsen attack. I think it's a perfect example how Magnus played the game here. Really wild stuff. With these maneuvers, with his tactical sequences, he's reaching the end game stage. That's the beauty about this game. Really one of my favorite games by Magnus Carlsen. Maybe it's not so special. We have seen even better games, but when we talk about this specific subject, the pawn majority attack, this is really beautiful game here by Magnus Carlsen. So you see, now he's heading towards the end game stage more, and he has now 2 versus 1. He has now the possibility to create a distant pass pawn. We have talked about this position. He can create the distant pass pawn. Black is going to get deflected with his king, and now in a potential endgame, white is going towards this king side and will eventually pick up the pawns and have a beautiful endgame. So this is really the way to go. Really a great game, as I said, by Magnus. So let's see a couple more moves because of the beauty of the game. I just moved this couple moves a little bit faster. You see now b5 is coming. The bishop has to step back. Magnus now uses this moment. h4 creates breathing spaces for the king. Bishop to f5. Now here Magnus took another pawn. I wanted to show you just the endgame beautiful tactic that Magnus pulled off here. Here Magnus got challenged, traded off the rooks, which is a good thing for Magnus Carlsen because he's getting more and more towards the endgame. So it's every trades of pieces is now in white's favor because we can always create a passer here on the c file, maybe on the b file. So now c5, here Magnus took another pawn. We have now queen to e1 by Gelfand, and now after bishop to c4, it seems almost that something went wrong here because Magnus is going to lose now the bishop on f1, but Magnus calculated this really in a beautiful way. Queen to f3, queen to f1, we have king to h2, queen to b1, Magnus simply pushed the pawn further. Here Boris Gelfand is trying to not allow the move c6, but Magnus Carlsen is playing c6 anyway. We have queen to d5, and now after queen to g3 in this position, Boris Gelfand resigns. So you cannot, of course, catch up anymore with his pawns. You can maybe take out this pawn on c6, but Magnus will promote a new queen, and this is game over. So really beautiful game by Magnus Carlsen, how he made this almost impossible move b4 happen. Really great game here by the world champion. So let's see now another example, and here again it's the beautiful brutal Stockfish 15 engine. Here we have again an asymmetrical pawn structure. We can agree here that black is here a 3 versus 2 pawn majority on the queen side. So again, I'm talking about the potential endgame. In a potential endgame, black should be better. So that's why you have to make something out of your attack, out of your pawn majority attack in the middle game stage. So here Stockfish pulled off the move f4 and got challenged with this kind of an idea, h6. But now Stockfish played a beautiful, brutal move h4, continued the pressure, is creating now a pawn storm, really brutal pawn majority attack, because if you take here, then of course the h6 g5 is going to happen. Now you have to step back with your knight, and with e5 flick, this position suddenly gets opened. Here you could get destroyed around the square h7. So this is really, really stunning what Stockfish did here. So it was again a devastating attack. So I'm talking about this kind of a tactic because sometimes we forget about this idea, including even more pawns in the attack, even if we have to sacrifice some more material. So as I said, here it was a beautiful example how, for instance, you can also open the h file. So I don't want to show now the whole game. It's really not the point about this video. I wanted to just show you some ideas that you can maybe apply in your own games, because many of these things will probably happen to you, and then of course you want to know what you're doing in the middle game stage. So here, let's see now. This is my favorite example, and let's flip the board. Sorry. This is really my favorite example about pawn majorities. This is one example that I already used in one of my videos, but I wanted to show you this again because, in my opinion, this is simply brilliant play. It was a gameplay by Erno Greben versus Vasily Smyslov. Vasily Smyslov here with the black pieces, and this is stunning what Vasily Smyslov is doing here, because first of all, we should understand again the pawn majorities on the board. We have here a 3 versus 2 situation on the queen side. So again, when we talk about the potential endgame, black should be better because of the opportunity to create a distant pass pawn. So we have now a queen side pawn majority. So black can always, the potential endgame, create this distant pass pawn that could always deflect white's king towards the queen side, and then of course black is including this king into the game and maybe picks up many of the pawns. But we cannot really talk immediately about this kind of an idea, or we can we not? I'm not sure. Actually we can, because this is the beauty about this example, that actually Vasily Smyslov played now the whole game, it's even in the opening stage now. I think we can agree still we're in the opening. He played the whole game just to make this b4 move happen. If b4 happens, he made his pawn majority attack happen, and now he's rolling on the queen side. So how to make that happen? Look what Vasily Smyslov did here. First of all, we have to understand the weird position of the queen. The queen is on a3, and it's not so good that actually the queen has to protect the potential b4 progress. So that's why you have to now use more pieces. You have to play maybe something like knight to a2, bishop to b4 in order to stop b4. If b4 happens, we can agree this is now devastating then position for white. But here in the continuation, his opponent played, of course, the move knight to a2. It's not allowing the move b4, but how we should make progress here? We're actually trying to trade off every piece that is protecting the b4 squares, the knight still, maybe even the bishop, the queen, and then maybe push the pawn on b4 and create ourselves a distant pass pawn. But it's not so easy. First, Vasily Smyslov played a6, fixing the pawn structure. We have here rook to e8. We have knight to c3. Now Vasily Smyslov played this kind of move. He's searching for opportunities maybe to somehow get one of these knights on e4. This is now also a clear target. We're not going to analyze now really every move from a tactical point of view. What happens if that happens? I hope you can agree this is not important now in this particular game. Our goal, just focus on that. Our goal here is to push the pawn on b4. We want to make progress there in order to create dynamics on the queen side. So as I said, we'll just make this moves a little bit faster here. Vasily Smyslov, first mission accomplished. He traded off the first piece that can block out the potential b4 progress. So here we have knight to f6. So here Vasily Smyslov is still trying to occupy the e4 square, which is of course a clear target in black's camp. We have bishop to b7, bishop to f3, queen to d8. We have now knight to g4, knight to g5, trying maybe to reroute the knight, include the knight somehow into the game. We have now bishop to g2, also the h3 pawn was hanging. So as I said, we're not going to analyze now these moves really from a tactical point of view. But now the fun starts. Here Vasily Smyslov, because of his beautiful central control of the knight on e4, is deflecting now. This is the beautiful part. He's deflecting now the queen, also the knight. Both of these pieces are, as we said in the beginning, are controlling b4. But now with this announcement of a kingside attack, Probably white started to sweat now. Probably white said, okay, why is he attacking now the king side? Because I have there my advantage. I'm better on the king side. Why should he now create a pawn minority attack here? Really, really well. So we have really great elements here. Pawn minority, but also potential pawn majority here. So you see now, with the announcement of a potential f4 move that could split here the position, that could open the position, maybe open the g file, uh, probably white got annoyed by this and tried to deflect more pieces, try to get more pieces into the defense. Especially the queen and the knight are good defensive pieces. But when that happens, then mission accomplished. We're pushing the pawn on b4. That's the beauty about this game. This is really, in my opinion, one of my favorite examples about pawn majorities. Here, let's see, knight to e1. Again, mission accomplished. Again, the knight is not controlling b4 anymore. So you have queen to f6, knight to f3. Okay, you brought a new piece into the game, but now with the move f4, look at this. We're getting this pawn structure opened. We have now h5. We're trying again to open the position on the king side. Knight to e5. So as I said, we're not going to analyze really in a deeper way this kind of moves. But now, again, mission accomplished. The queen is coming to f3. Now there's no piece anymore that is protecting the potential b4 progress. Really, really great strategic play here by Vasily Smysl. Rook to d6. We have rook to d1, rook to f8. So as I said, we just move this moves a little bit faster. And now with the move b4, look at this. For instance, my Stockfish engine at home evaluates this position as minus 5.5 for black. So because of the b4 move. Look at this. Now both of these pawns are dynamic. In the near future, c3 is going to happen, and from this point on, the game was really a one-way ticket, and Vasily Smysl destroyed here white with the black pieces. So look how the strategy actually didn't change, but what Vasily Smysl needed to do to get rid of any defender of the b4 progress. So really, really a great strategic game, as I said here by black. So let's see now another example. This game is quite spectacular. It's a sort of a maybe, I don't know, maybe a lower rated game that I found, but it's, I think, a great example again about the potential creation of a pawn majority attack. So why to move? Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now here the best continuation here for white. So try to see again if there are maybe some opportunities to create a pawn majority attack, but again, really this beautiful dynamic middle game stage pawn majority attack. So try to see now here the best continuation. So take your time. It's maybe not so easy to see, but this is a very, very important example. So okay, the problem about black's position is here that after potential d takes e5, black wants to create maybe the symmetrical pawn structure that we have talked about. The symmetrical pawn structure is a good defensive strategy sometimes because now you can maybe play the move f4, but black doesn't have to react. Black has a good control of the e5. If you want to take, then you're leaving yourself maybe an isolated pawn. So but okay, probably still white is much, much better. That's not the point. But as I said, when we have symmetrical pawn structures, it's much, much harder to create dynamics. But actually, this d takes e5 idea is not working. And that's the problem now about black's position. The possibility of this move, bishop to g4, and look at this. Now, it's not such a good game anymore because you're lined up here on d7. Even if you try to escape here, it's not working because knight to b6 is going to happen. Look at this. You cannot take bishop to d7 is going to happen, so it's a position that you can resign. That's now the problem of this particular position. So you cannot create the symmetrical pawn structure. You have to actually take with one of these pieces, either with the knight or with the bishop. But whatever happens now, we can launch a pawn majority attack because you couldn't take with the pawn. And now the pawns are rolling, and the cool part is whenever you have the opportunity to maybe create this pawn majority, with the plus tempo, because now you see this attack comes with a direct attack against the bishop. Now here black tried this kind of idea. We have this one, f takes e5, the bishop has to retreat, but look at this, the position is falling apart. We have g5, knight to f5, rook to f5, knight to f6, and after e5 in this position, look at this, we have a central pawn storm now here actually black resigned. But that was all possible because of this tactical opportunity that actually black could not take out the pawn with the pawn. So now after knight to e5, whatever happens, still we're launching f4, bishop to e5. We have seen was devastating. From this point on, the game was a one-way ticket. So I hope you could have really solved this positional puzzle here. So let's see now defensive ideas against a pawn majority attack. So we are talking now about middle game pawn majorities. I'm not talking about the end game stage, because obviously if this would be an end game, then black is winning because black is now an extra pawn. But I just want you to imagine a little bit, be creative here. Imagine this position with more pieces on the board. How could we defend when black is storming now? Black is storming with 4 pawns against our 3 lonely pawns here. We really start to sweat. What should we do? What should we do? How should we defend this position? So one of the most important defensive ideas about pawn majorities is to split the pawn chain. So you see, we maybe sacrifice somewhere something, or maybe we have traded off pieces, but now we have created this kind of a double pawn structure. Now the pawn chain is split. It's not so dynamic anymore. So you can also maybe block out the pawn chain. Maybe you allow your opponent to create further progress, but we are blocking out, maybe with the king or maybe with the knight. The best piece that can block out the pawn chain is the knight. So you can create a blockade, but still the knight is very active. So I've created also defensive strategy video about the blockade idea, about how to handle pawn storm, so you can also check it out. It's one of my videos in my one of my basics in chat series videos. Please check it out. I've talked about this kind of defensive strategies, but as I said here, again, I'm pointing out, just imagine this position with more pieces. Okay, your opponent has created an attack here, but we always evaluate the pawn storm as does he make further progress? Can he make further progress? In this particular position, we have defended, at least for a while, we have stopped the further progress of the pawn chain. Like in this example, maybe he still has his extra pawn, but we have stopped the potential progress, because now the only way to make progress is, of course, to play the move d4, but we have already control of the d4 square. So you see, these are 2 examples. What you could also do is create this 3 versus 4 pawn equality. We have talked about this pawn equality in the minority attack video, where you create maybe this kind of a structure and still black cannot push the pawn because 3 pawns are holding 4 pawns. So these are very important defensive strategies. So I've sorted out 3 very important examples that I think are showing really cool defensive strategies against potential pawn majorities. So here it's an example played by Jose Raul Capablanca against Rudolf Spielmann, and again, let's first evaluate, let's first see where are the potential pawn majorities. We can agree here that, again, black is here 3 versus 2 pawn majority, so here black should be much better. So again, we're talking about the potential endgame when maybe this position reaches something like this, maybe not the same. This could be a good game for black, because black could have then really this potential endgame that's simply winning. So that's why we have to immediately undermine this idea. So we are trying to battle against the pawn majority. So one of the ideas of black can be, of course, to play knight to b8 and knight to c6, maybe kicking away the queen. I'm not saying if these moves are really good in a tactical way. I'm not evaluating now the position with a stockfish engine or something. I don't care about if these moves are really correct when it comes to tactical point of view. I'm just saying, if you maybe allow your opponent maybe to play knight to b8, knight to c6, and the queen has to step back, and finally maybe black tries to push the pawn on a5 with b4, then suddenly this could be a bad game for whites. So that's the point. We should not allow him to create here a pawn storm on the queen side. So that's why, as we talked about in this particular example, one of the main ideas is just to split the pawn chain, let the pawn chain explode here now. And of course, the best way to let the pawn chain explode is to break it in the center. So that's why here a4 was played by here Jose Raul Capablanca, and he solved now every positional problem with this single move. So you see, with the move a4, if you take, of course, okay, you took the pawn. We don't have to even take out now the pawn. We can agree that this is now not a dynamic pawn structure anymore. This is a weak pawn, this is a weak pawn, this is a weak pawn here. Also, the e4 pawn is weak, so now we have the beautiful bishop pair. We'll maybe even play f3, then e4 will create a central pawn storm here. I'm not saying again if these are correct moves in this particular position, but this could be also a decent plan, I think, here for white. So let's see the game. After move a4, we have queen to d5. We have a takes b5 here. Jose Capablanca even sacrificed the piece just in order to take out this one. The rook has to step back, and he created now actually himself here a distant pass pawn, and eventually won the game with some, again, beautiful endgame techniques. But that was not the point. As I said, we are not talking about tactics here really in a more deeper way. The most important move that you should recognize here is the move a4. There are many opportunities now for white, for black to play the game differently. Capablanca doesn't have to necessarily go for this wild line where he sacrifices the bishop, but it's very important to recognize the move a4 to stop the pawn chain or to explode the pawn chain, to let it break it in the center of the board with this a4 move. So let's see now another example. Here it's a beautiful game played by Stockfish with the black pieces against Lila C0 from the recent TCEC competition. Maybe you can pause the video. I've analyzed already the game. We have seen the game recently on my YouTube chess channel in our commented chess games played by computer series. Please maybe pause the video and also try to stop or maybe split the pawn chain here. How would you make defensive progress here from black's perspective? Because obviously it's a weird position. Look at this. The pawns are rolling here. We have here a 4 versus 3 pawn majority. So we're still in the middle game stage. If you don't defend this position, you could get destroyed by this pawn storm. So maybe pause the video and try to see now the best defensive move here for black. So take your time and try to solve this, again, positional puzzle sort of here that was played by Stockfish. So, okay. Okay, here Stockfish played the beautiful g5 move. G5 move is built because it stops again the potential progress of blacks. If you want to take whites, pardon me, if you want to take, okay, at least we have slowed down your progress. Now we play knight to d7, knight to e5, and we have a good control of the center of the board, and we will have, I think, also a decent attack on the square f3. Here the continuation, Lila, here in the continuation, Lila try f5, but now Stockfish again is leaving the position like this, is trying to reroute here the piece, is also creating defensive ideas like bishop to f6. You can always create this kind of a blockade. So again, at least with this move, the pawn chain is stopped. The pawn are not rolling anymore. So as I said in the beginning, we always evaluate the strength of pawns if they're mobile. In this particular position, they're not mobile anymore. The only mobile pawn is now the f pawn, but if you move it further, you will probably lose it. This pawn is not possible to move anymore because the black has a good control. This pawn is bad anyway. Maybe you can push this pawn, but this pawn is controlled by the g5 pawn. So we have stopped the potential progress now of white in the continuation of the game. That was the most important move here by Stock 15. So here we have this supported pass pawn as we had in this example. So the supported pass pawn is really hard to play against because it's when it comes to the endgame stage, as we said, this is simply winning for white because we have reached, as we said, this position. If the king goes behind this pawn, white will simply push the pawn further and black is losing the game. It's here also the same example. If you could just imagine now again this position without pieces, without queens, I don't know, without the rooks on the board, then white could have here a good endgame because of the supported pass pawn, because black will never be able to take out this pawn. If black goes for this pawn, then always white can push, like in the previous example, this pawn, and we'll have a good endgame. So that's why we should already consider a blockade, and the blockade is very important against pawn storms. So it's very important to stop again the potential progress of whites, but we should also consider this game is not supposed to get an endgame stage. If that happens, we're probably losing the game. So that's why it's a weird position. It's really hard to defend this kind of position. So that's why here Max Juve played here with against Herman Pilnik, and Pilnik found a beautiful idea. He already played the move knight to c4 after b3, knight to d6, and he created now the blockade, and he's stopping really the progress of white. f4 is going to happen probably, you see, but still we have, I think, a good control of the e5 score, so we're not allowing here white to come with the pawn storm. So at least for a while, you see, with this maneuver of the knight, black is settled down, black has defended the position and is battling now against the pawn storm. So again, I'm pointing out, you should not allow here from black's perspective white to reach the endgame stage, because he would have a good game. So let's see a couple more moves here. Bishop to e3 was played, b6, fixing everything. So you have to play also defensively in a good way. You cannot rush just into attack. Sometimes it's just time to defend. So here in the continuation, queen to d2, rook to e8, f4 is coming. You see the storm is coming, but now here knight to c7 was a good move here by Pilnik, because he realized, okay, you can maybe take, but now we just pick up here also the pawn, and still look at this. These two pawns are connected, but we have blocked them out. You see, with the bishop and with the knight, with the rook, we're not allowing further progress. So as I said, we always evaluate the strength of pawns if they're mobile or not. In this particular case, they're not mobile anymore. And now maybe it's time for us here, for instance, in this particular position, to play a6, maybe b5 if it allows, maybe then c4, b4, a4. I'm not saying again which moves are correct when it comes to evaluations and also tactical calculations, but here, in my opinion, mission accomplished. We have stopped our opponent's pawn storm, his pawn majority attack, and now we can launch here maybe a queenside attack. So again, I don't want to talk about this game anymore. It's not the point that I show now how white made a huge mistake and lost the game. That's not the point about this video. This is a very important example how, when your opponent is creating, let's go back, the strategic concept of a supported pass pawn here. Let's go to this critical moment when he created the supported pass pawn and is probably launching here at f4 attack against you. It's very important to create a blockade. That's your only chance in the game. If you don't play the blockade, you will eventually lose the game. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas, and I hope that you enjoy this video. Please consider always this kind of stuff. Let's go to this critical position. We're flipping the board. So let's repeat again. When we talk about middle games, pawn storms, pawn majorities are good. But when we're talking about endgames, you could reach this kind of position where the pawn majority, in order to create a distant pass pawn like this, is much better for the player who can create, of course, the distant pass pawn, the pass pawn that's hard to catch here in this particular case. So here it's a perfect example for this how a game can go wrong. You started with a beautiful attack, but then you didn't make anything out of this, and now you're having suddenly a losing endgame. So okay, these are the most important strategic concepts, and these are also the most important strategic ideas how to defend yourself against the pawn majority attack. If you want to know more about the pawn minority attack, please also check out our previous video. Again, here's the link of our pawn minority attack video. And if you want to know more about chat strategy and tactics, check out our Become a Master series. Here's the link of our playlist and our Basics in Chat series video with some other tactical possibilities and opportunities in the middle game stage. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. What to say? Chess is the best, of course.